Here's why Rhaenyra didn't immediately retaliate after Lucerys' death. When Lucerys Velaryon, the young and innocent son of Rhaenyra Targaryen, was killed in the skies over Storm's End, history tells us that the dance of the dragons truly began. That moment, a boy on a small dragon, caught in the shadow of the massive and ancient Vhagar, hunted by his uncle Aemond, was one of the most tragic deaths in the entire Targaryen legacy. Lucerys was sent on a diplomatic mission, an errand to secure loyalty for his mother's claim to the Iron Throne, but instead he lost his life. His dragon, Arax, was torn apart in midair. His body, if it ever fell whole, was swallowed by the stormy sea below. The grief that consumed Rhaenyra when she heard the news was beyond words, and yet, what shocked many readers of Fire and Blood and viewers of House of the Dragon alike is that she did not immediately retaliate. She did not rain fire down upon King's Landing the very next day. She did not send her dragons to burn Aemond alive. She did not even declare all-out war instantly. And this raises a fascinating question: why not? Why did a woman with dragons, a grieving mother with the fury of fire in her heart, choose restraint instead of vengeance in the immediate aftermath of her son's death? To understand this, we must first step into Rhaenyra's shoes. She was not only a mother who had just lost her child, but also a claimant to the most powerful seat in the known world. The Iron Throne was not just a chair of swords, it was a position that demanded calculation, strategy, and cold judgment. Rhaenyra knew that if she allowed her grief to dictate her actions, she could lose not only her claim but also the loyalty of her allies. In Westeros, kings and queens who acted out of blind rage often lost their crowns, their wars, and sometimes their heads. We also must remember the political situation at the time. When Lucerys was killed, Rhaenyra had not yet fully secured the strength she needed to face the Greens. Her rival, Aegon II, had already been crowned in King's Landing. He had the backing of House Hightower, Esser Criston Cole, and a strong presence in the capital. He held the Red Keep, the Iron Throne, and the city itself. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra's forces were still being rallied. Her claim was strong by birthright, but claims alone do not win wars. What she needed were armies, castles, and sworn banners to back her cause. Dragons were a terrifying weapon, but they could not hold ground. A dragon might burn a castle, but men were needed to march inside, garrison it, and defend it. To strike immediately after Lucerys' death, when she did not yet have her alliances solidified, would have been reckless. It could have ended her campaign before it began. There is also the matter of perception. Rhaenyra had always been judged more harshly than the men around her, simply because she was a woman daring to claim a throne that many believed was reserved for male heirs. If she had reacted like a vengeful mother and unleashed destruction without restraint, her enemies would have seized upon it as proof that she was unfit to rule. They would have painted her as a hysterical queen driven mad by grief, someone too unstable to sit upon the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra understood this. She knew that every move she made would be scrutinized. Her restraint was not weakness, it was strategy. And yet, the human heart cannot be ignored. Rhaenyra was a mother first and foremost. Losing Lucerys was not a simple political calculation, it was the tearing away of flesh and blood. When Daemon delivered the news to her at Dragonstone, her face told the story. The woman shattered inside, but the queen hardened. Her silence was not the absence of rage, it was the pause before the storm. That moment has been described as the birth of the true war queen. Her grief was real, her pain was unimaginable, but she swallowed it because she understood that vengeance must come at the right moment, not the wrong one. Another layer to consider is her reliance on her council and her allies. Figures like Daemon Targaryen, Corlys Velaryon, and her sworn lords all had voices in the decisions made at Dragonstone. While Daemon himself was far more inclined toward swift vengeance, even he understood that the war required careful timing. Striking too early might alienate powerful houses whose loyalty had not yet been cemented. Houses like Arryn, Tully, and Stark were crucial to Rhaenyra's cause. She could not risk alienating them by launching an unrestrained assault that could plunge the realm into immediate chaos. Instead, she needed to show herself as a just queen, a measured leader, someone who would respond with strength but not madness. We must also look at the cultural and religious backdrop of Westeros. The faith of the Seven held sway over the people, and though Targaryens were dragons above men, they still had to reckon with perception. An outright slaughter in King's Landing, an act of vengeance fueled purely by grief, could have turned the common people against Rhaenyra. She needed their favor, or at the very least, their neutrality. Unlike her ancestors who conquered the realm with fire and blood, Rhaenyra was fighting against a family already on the throne. Winning hearts and minds mattered in her war. And then there is the matter of dragons themselves. While dragons were unmatched on the battlefield, they were also volatile and dangerous. Rhaenyra knew that if she set her dragons loose in a fit of anger, the destruction could spiral out of control. King's Landing, with its narrow streets and packed population, could burn to the ground in an instant. Tens of thousands of innocents could die, not just her enemies. As queen, she had to balance her desire for vengeance with the knowledge that her ultimate goal was to rule Westeros, not to reduce it to ashes. What good was a crown if there was no kingdom left to rule? It's also important to compare Rhaenyra's nature with that of Daemon. Daemon was a man of action, a warrior who often answered insult with steel. Rhaenyra, though fiery, had been raised to think of herself as a ruler. She carried the teachings of her father, King Viserys, who sought peace above all else. While Viserys' reluctance to act decisively created the conflict in the first place, his influence lingered in Rhaenyra's cautious approach. Her instinct was not to lash out, but to calculate. Her father's lessons, her training as heir, and her own understanding of politics all informed her decision not to retaliate immediately after Luke's death. But make no mistake, her restraint was not forgiveness. It was the sharpening of a blade. In history, we see how her grief eventually fueled her vengeance. The war escalated in ways that neither side could have foreseen. Blood answered blood, and the dance of the dragons became one of the most destructive conflicts in Westeros history. Rhaenyra did avenge her son, but she did it when the time was right, when her allies were ready, and when her war machine was fully in motion. So why didn't she retaliate immediately after Lucerys' death? Because she was not just a grieving mother, she was a queen in the making. Because politics demanded restraint. Because her enemies would have painted her as a monster. Because her allies urged caution. Because dragons were too powerful a weapon to be unleashed recklessly. Because ruling required patience, even in the face of unbearable pain. This choice, this restraint, is what makes Rhaenyra such a fascinating character. She was not cold, she was not unfeeling, but she understood that her war could not be won in a single night of vengeance. Her war would be won through fire, yes, but also through calculation, timing, and sacrifice. Lucerys' death broke her heart, but it also steeled her will. The storm was coming, and when it came, it would be devastating. And that is why history remembers that moment as the true spark of the Dance of the Dragons. Rhaenyra's restraint after Luke's death was not the absence of war, it was the prelude. It was the silence before the roar. And when her retaliation finally came, it was not just the act of a grieving mother, but the judgment of a queen who had bided her time, gathered her strength, and unleashed the fury of House Targaryen on all who